Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. So we're back on this Dean guitar today. This is the custom zone in fluorescent green, and remember it needed a nut. So I've ordered a Graphtech nut. This is a black tusk nut. I'll put a link to the Amazon page for this nut in the description. We're going to glue that in today, slot it, and then we'll finish the setup. And if you remember, I just restrung this guitar and I haven't cut my strings off yet, so I'm sorry about that mess, but I don't cut my strings until I'm sure my setup is good. Now we're gonna put a little bit of super glue on the bottom of this nut and just put it in place. I've got some 30-second super glue, so I'm not gonna have to hold it in place long or clamp it. I've got this gel stuff, so it's not gonna run everywhere. It ought to work really great, and we'll see if we can just get a little dab or two on here. I wouldn't want to coat the bottom of this nut entirely because you do have to remove these things at some point. All right, so once you get your glue in place, you just want to set it in there. You don't have long to work with this kind of super glue, so you kind of have to make sure it's lined up properly at the edges. And I pre-fitted this before I started this just to make sure that it was exactly the same dimensions as the original. And it didn't actually require any slotting or any filing or anything like that yet. So this is going on just like it came out of the package. That's the benefit of ordering the right size nut to start with, and Graphtech has a bunch of different options to choose from. But if you order the exact measurements that you took out, you're not going to have to do much fitting. Okay, well I gave the nut a couple minutes to dry, even though that's 30-second set super glue. I'm just going to put the strings back over the nut now. And I'm going to go ahead and give it a tune and just check the distance between the string and the first fret, or on every string. Alright, so the way I do nut slotting, you can view a quick tip video that I created last year about this for a lot more detail. I like to use gauged nut files that are close to the size of the strings, and I use a 20 thousandths distance over the first fret for each string. Sometimes I'll fudge that a little bit down to 18 on the unwound strings. People will argue with me about this. Some people like it at 16, some people like it at 14. You know, 20 thousandths is not super high in my opinion, and if you want to take it down further than that, you can always take it down, but you can't go up. Anyway, I'm going to go to 20 thousandths on these wound strings here and 18 roughly on these unwound strings. I've got my nut files all laid out. I've got my 20 thousandths feeler gauge ready. And the way that I do this is with the guitar tuned, and I untune or detune the string that I'm going to be working on. Then I'll file that slot, and I usually work from the bass side to the treble side because the bass side goes a lot slower. But I'll detune the string here, set it to the side. Now we're going to cut that slot. Now when you're cutting this slot, you want to file downward this way in the angle of the headstock essentially. Now if you had a stepped down and flat headstock, you would still want to file down at an angle, at roughly the angle that the strings pass over the nut. The reason for that is just to kind of relieve the string a little bit so it doesn't have such a sharp break over the nut. So anyway, here we go with this one. And I checked these beforehand, and by the way, they are actually pretty close as it is, so I'm not going to have to file this much. Alright, I'm just going to put this back on, give it a quick tune-up. Doesn't have to be exact. And what I'm doing is checking here for 20 thousandths distance between these two, the first fret and the string. There's still a little bit of daylight there, although it's pretty close. Alright, so that one's pretty close now. So what you would do if you're working on the next string, detune this one and just move it out of the way, work on it, and then put it back. So I'll just work my way across from the bass side to the treble side. The only thing I'll note is when you get over to this treble side, things cut a lot faster. So it's going to take fewer strokes, you're going to finish faster, and you just have to be a lot more careful. What I've been up to here, I got the string ends cut off. I have everything up to my satisfaction on this nut, and I was trying to set neck relief. Now, to start out with, this thing has a 16-inch radius as measured with my radius gauges, and I'll put a link to my radius gauges on Amazon in my description. These are kind of cool because you can use them over the strings. You can also use the understring ones, and I actually have some of those too, and I can link to those as well. With a 16-inch neck radius means that you have little neck relief, or you don't need as much neck relief as you might on like a regular Fender Strat with a 9.5-inch radius or something like that. Like on a Fender spec page, Fender tells me that a 16-inch radius is going to call for 8 thousandths of neck relief, and I think that might even be higher than what Dean might recommend. I couldn't find Dean recommendations. I pulled out my 8 thousandths, set my capo here, you know, got my 17th fret fretted and measured at the 8th, and I've got, you know, roughly 6 thousandths in there now. The truss rod is kind of out of adjustment. I don't think these strings, these hybrid slinkies, are providing enough tension, so I don't think that I'm going to be able to achieve 8 thousandths, but I'm actually okay with that in this case. I did get a set of 12s that this guy was using before me. I'm not going to put those on here. I think that the lighter gauge strings with the longer scale length is easier to play. But anyway, let's see. I've got the Action that I've been working on also, and I've been trying to set it at roughly 3/64 at the 17th fret. I have played around with 3 and 4. This guitar seems to be able to take 3, and I think it's probably, you know, it helps it that it's got such a flat radius. Only problem string I've got is this high E string here, and I can set it at 4/64, but it's got a little bit of a buzz right there. I think the 12th fret is a little high, and the 14th fret is probably a little high. Everything else seems okay. So, and it's only on the E string, it's not the B. It's all fine in that area. And my fret rocker is telling me that it's just the 12th and the 14th right on the end. It's up here on the B, it checks out, and it doesn't rock at all. Slide it down, and she starts rocking a little bit. It might have a slight rock at the B, but it's not making a rattle. So what I can do is just, I'm going to clean these up. I'm going to try to focus on the 12th and the 14th, and really just the last half of it. All right, so here's how I'm going to approach this. I've got this, it's actually a knife sharpener, but it's a diamond sharpening stone that I've used for several projects like this. And what I can do is just lay it across the few frets that are making problems for me here, and really try to focus in on that 12th fret and that 14th fret. I don't have to spend a lot of time because there's not a lot of a problem there. And then as I do that, come in with my fret rocker, see if it's got any issues. It's still a little high. I think I'm actually going to focus in on that with a little file. Okay, I think that 12th is okay now. I've been working on it for a few minutes. I'm going to move on to the 14th. All right, well, I went a little farther on this than I thought I would, but I went ahead and flattened it out from about 10 to 18, maybe 9. So I went ahead and used the stone across all of them, and just to make sure, just looking at it, it looks right, because the 12th and the 14th are definitely flatted out more than the other ones are. So that's a good thing. Let me grab my crowning file and we'll get to work on that. Okay, the tape just makes it a little bit safer, so that as I'm sanding or filing into the fretboard, that even though I've got a safe edge file here, it's not going to scar up the paint. All right, well, the frets look pretty good here. I've just got to go back in and clean up after myself. The file that I use is a Fret Guru dagger, and actually it works pretty well. I will say it gets a little clogged, more clogged than I would like, but it does produce a nice finish, and you don't have to do a lot of polishing afterward. But I'm going to go ahead and do a pass with a 1000 grit fret eraser. I can put a link to those in my description as well, but I'm going to hit these tops just to take off any excess blue marker that didn't make its way off, and to shine them up just a little bit. All right, well, after the fret erasers, things look pretty nice and shiny. I did have to hit one of them with the 400 grit first before I finished it up, but it looks pretty good now. I'm going to go ahead and peel the tape, and then we can retune. After all that fret work, this is what success sounds like. No more issues there. Let's flip things over and I'll show you a few of the internals on the back. It does have shielding paint on all the cavities, but it's really sloppily applied. And the cavity covers are shielded. It has a full-size block on the trim, 3 trim springs. They were in a V, I've corrected that. Really crappy mini pots and really crappy switch, which is not at all surprising, but I will say what did surprise me was the difference on the 2 humbuckers. The bridge humbucker has a passive resistance of about 16. The neck humbucker has a passive resistance of about 8.8, 8.9. All right, well, this closes the book on the old green monster here. I appreciate when you guys hang out, give me likes and comments. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time.